There are presidents whose names are carved into monuments, their faces stamped into memory by time and ceremony. And then there are men whose names were never meant to be celebrated, because they were never supposed to be seen at all. For nearly half a century, one man held secrets on presidents, senators, movie stars, civil rights leaders, and enemies of the state. He survived 8 administrations, watched governments rise and fall, and built an empire inside the United States government that answered to no one but him. When people crossed him, they were rarely arrested. They were erased. Careers collapsed. Reputations imploded. Lives unraveled quietly behind closed doors. This is not the story of a president. This is not the story of a general. This is the story of J. Edgar Hoover, the man who turned fear into policy, information into power, and surveillance into the backbone of modern America. And long after his death, the country is still living in the world he built. John Edgar Hoover entered the world on January 1, 1895 in Washington, D.C., a city unlike any other. This was not a place of industry or invention. It was a city of corridors, offices, whispers, and rank. Power here was not loud. It was procedural. Hoover's childhood was shaped by 2 forces. His father, a low-level government employee, struggled as he aged, eventually slipping into mental decline. His mother, Anna Marie Hoover, was rigid, commanding, and obsessed with respectability. In her world, image was survival. Weakness was humiliation. Control was safety. Hoover absorbed these lessons early. He was not athletic. He did not dominate socially, but he was precise, disciplined, and deeply uncomfortable with chaos. Disorder frightened him. Ambiguity enraged him. While studying at George Washington University, Hoover worked at the Library of Congress. Day after day, he cataloged records, cross-referenced documents, and learned how information could be sorted, retrieved, and weaponized. He discovered something intoxicating. Whoever controlled the records controlled the narrative. This was not just clerical work, it was training. America after World War I was anxious and unstable. The Russian Revolution had ignited terror of communist uprisings. Bombings struck American cities. Newspapers warned that radicals were hiding in plain sight. Fear was everywhere, and fear creates opportunity. At just 24 years old, Hoover was placed in charge of the Justice Department's Radical Division under Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer. Almost overnight, Hoover began building lists, tens of thousands of names, often without evidence, often without warrants. Immigrants, labor leaders, political dissidents. To Hoover, ideology itself was suspicion. The Palmer raids followed. Homes were entered without warrants. People were arrested without charges. Deportations followed on ideological grounds alone. The raids were later condemned as unconstitutional, and Palmer's political career collapsed under the backlash. Hoover emerged untouched. He had learned the most important rule of power. When the nation is afraid, legality becomes negotiable, and usefulness becomes immunity. In 1924, the Bureau of Investigation was a disgraced agency riddled with corruption. President Calvin Coolidge, advised by Attorney General Harlan Fiske Stone, appointed Hoover director with the expectation that he would clean house. Hoover did far more than that. He rebuilt the Bureau from the ground up, molding it into a reflection of his own psyche. Agents were required to be clean-cut, disciplined, and unquestioningly loyal. Personal scandals were intolerable. Independent thinking was dangerous. The chain of command ended with him. He centralized fingerprints, built the first national crime lab, and professionalized investigative techniques. On the surface, Hoover was modernizing American law enforcement. Beneath it, he was centralizing power in ways no one fully understood. During the Great Depression, Hoover seized the national spotlight by hunting America's most notorious criminals. John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd. Some victories were real, others were carefully exaggerated. What mattered was perception. Hoover turned the FBI into a brand, and himself into its face. By the time Franklin D. Roosevelt entered the White House, Hoover had become politically untouchable. World War II expanded Hoover's reach beyond anything he had imagined. Under Roosevelt, the FBI monitored suspected fascists, Japanese Americans, labor organizers, and political critics. Some operations were authorized, many were not. Hoover rarely asked permission when he believed history was on his side. After the war, the Cold War hardened his worldview. Communism, to Hoover, was not a political ideology. It was an infection. And America, in his mind, was already compromised. While Senator Joseph McCarthy became the public face of anti-communist hysteria, Hoover became its quiet architect. When McCarthy collapsed under his own recklessness, Hoover survived once again. He always did. The difference was simple. McCarthy needed headlines. Hoover had files. By the 1950s, Hoover possessed something more powerful than any office: leverage. He kept secret files on presidents, first ladies, senators, Supreme Court justices, journalists, and celebrities. Affairs, medical conditions, financial scandals, private conversations. Some files were accurate, some were exaggerated, some were speculative. No one knew which was which. Presidents understood the risk. Harry Truman despised Hoover and privately warned that the FBI was becoming a secret police force. He still failed to remove him. Eisenhower relied on Hoover's intelligence. John F. Kennedy distrusted him but tolerated him. Lyndon B. Johnson protected him openly, believing Hoover's removal would destabilize the government itself. Hoover never issued threats. He never had to. Uncertainty was his weapon. As America entered the 1960s, a new threat emerged in Hoover's mind. Not foreign, but domestic. Civil rights movements challenged the racial and social order he believed necessary for stability. To Hoover, these movements were not moral awakenings. They were subversive networks. Through the FBI's COINTELPRO program, organizations were infiltrated, leaders were psychologically targeted, and movements were quietly torn apart from within. False letters were sent, rumors were planted, relationships were destroyed. Martin Luther King Jr. became Hoover's obsession. The FBI wiretapped King illegally, monitored his private life, and attempted to discredit him publicly. At one point, King received an anonymous letter urging him to end his own life. It remains one of the most disturbing abuses of power in American history. By this point, Hoover was no longer protecting the nation. He was protecting his vision of it. By the late 1960s, Hoover was aging, isolated, and increasingly out of step with the country he had shaped. Civil rights laws passed. Public trust in government collapsed. The Vietnam War fueled skepticism toward authority. Hoover doubled down. He refused to modernize. He dismissed critics. He tightened control. When he died in 1972, still in office after nearly 5 decades, the silence he left behind was deafening. Congressional investigations soon revealed the scope of his abuses: illegal surveillance, political sabotage, systematic violations of civil liberties. Reforms followed. Term limits were imposed. Oversight committees were created. But Hoover's architecture remained. J. Edgar Hoover never stood before voters. He never asked for trust. He never faced public judgment in his lifetime. Yet few individuals have ever shaped America more profoundly. He modernized law enforcement. He built national systems still in use today. And he normalized a culture of surveillance that has never fully receded. Hoover believed he was protecting America from chaos. History is still deciding whether he saved the nation or quietly taught it to fear itself. because the most dangerous power is not the kind that announces itself. It's the kind that keeps records.